All right, welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive. This time, we're going to be tackling something that's like totally fundamental to how modern software works.
Right?
We're talking API platform.
Exciting stuff.
Yeah, and if you're thinking like, wait, APIs aren't those just for like developers? Stick around because this goes way beyond just lines of code.
Yeah, this is going to be a fun one.
We're using Postman's API platform page as our guide today.
Oh, great source.
It is. Now, full disclosure, they're, a pretty big player in this space. So while their info is like super comprehensive, we'll definitely give you the full unbiased picture here.
It's a bit like, reading a glowing restaurant review written by the chef.
Oh, I like that.
We're going to be your discerning food critics. We're going to help you separate the hype from the substance.
I love that analogy. Okay, so before we get into like the nitty-gritty details,
Oh.
let's set the stage a bit. You've probably heard, everything's moving to the cloud, apps need to talk to each other, blah, blah, blah. But how does it actually happen? Like, how does that actually work?
The magic of APIs.
Yeah, that's where APIs come in. They're the messengers, the connectors, the hidden language that makes the digital world tick.
They make it all happen behind the scenes. And for a long time, companies just focused on managing those APIs, right? Just keeping them organized. But as the number of APIs just exploded, it became clear that we needed a more holistic approach, something bigger, something better. That's where the API platform comes in. Think of it like upgrading from a basic toolbox to like a full-blown workshop.
Ooh, I like where this is going.
You got all the tools you need all in one place.
So it's not just about keeping your APIs, nice and organized. It's about having the right tools and processes for every stage of their life cycle from start to finish.
Exactly. Design, development, testing, deployment, monitoring, everything's connected. And here's the really interesting part. This isn't just for the techies anymore.
Right.
API platforms have become so sophisticated that they impact the entire business.
Wait, really? How so?
Well, imagine you're a company that relies on partners.
Sure.
APIs are how you share data and functionality securely.
Okay.
A robust API platform makes that process smoother, faster, and less prone to errors. That means happier partners, faster time to market for new products, and potentially a bigger bottom line.
Okay, now I'm seeing why this is such a big deal. It's not just about, making developers' lives easier. It's about creating a more connected and efficient business ecosystem. So let's break down this API platform concept a little bit further. What does it actually consist of? What's in there?
Let's go back to that workshop analogy.
Well, I like it.
You've got different workbenches for different tasks. An API platform provides tools for designing your APIs in a way that's clear and consistent so everyone's on the same page. There's a documentation station so everyone knows how to use the APIs. You've got areas for rigorous testing and secure deployment. It's the whole package.
Yeah, it's almost like an assembly line, but
Yeah.
for digital services instead of like physical products. You've got specialized tools and processes at each stage, ensuring quality and consistency from start to finish.
Precisely. And just like a well-run factory, a good API platform helps you scale. As your business grows and you need more APIs, the platform keeps everything organized and manageable. No more chaos.
So from what we're seeing here on Postman's page, it sounds like API platforms are all about streamlining the creation, management, and consumption of APIs, and the benefits they kind of ripple across the entire organization, not just in one little department. But why are they suddenly so hot right now? I mean, APIs have been around for a while, right? What's changed?
They have. But the way we build software has changed dramatically in the past few years. Think about it. 10 years ago, most apps were these giant monolithic blocks of code, right? Just like one massive chunk. Now, everything is broken down into smaller, independent services, what we call microservices.
Right.
This allows for much faster development and deployment. It's much more agile.
Okay, so how do APIs fit into this microservices picture? What's their role?
They're the glue that holds it all together. Microservices communicate with each other through APIs.
Okay.
This approach, we often call it API first.
Yeah.
It's fundamentally different from how software was built in the past.
So instead of building a giant castle all at once, you're creating individual building blocks that can be assembled and reassembled as needed, like Legos.
Yes. And APIs are the instructions that tell each block how to connect with the others.
I got it.
But here's the thing. This new approach, it kind of exposed the limitations of the old ways of managing APIs. Traditional API management tools, they were designed for that monolithic world, not this flexible, interconnected one.
They weren't ready for the microservices revolution.
Exactly. And that's where API platforms come in. They offer a more comprehensive and agile solution for this modern software landscape. They're built for this.
Okay, I think we've laid some good groundwork here, but now let's dig into the specifics of what makes API platforms so powerful. What makes them tick?
Let's get into the nuts and bolts.
Postman's page highlights, benefits like flexibility and collaboration. Can you unpack those a bit for us? What makes them so crucial in the API world?
Sure. So think of flexibility as having the freedom to choose, the best tools for the job. You're not, an API platform doesn't force you into like a one-size-fits-all solution. You can integrate your favorite design tools, testing frameworks, deployment pipelines, all that stuff. It adapts to your workflow, not the other way around.
Oh, I see. So it's like having a customizable workshop where you can bring your own tools and arrange the workbench just how you like it. No more being stuck with someone else's, clunky equipment.
Exactly. And this flexibility extends to like how you consume APIs as well. It's not just about building them, it's about making them easily accessible and usable for others. A good API platform facilitates that seamless integration.
Got it. And what about this whole collaboration thing? It sounds a bit like a buzzword, honestly.
Yeah.
How do API platforms actually make teams work better together? What do they do?
Yeah. Okay, so picture this. You're working on a complex project with multiple developers, each responsible for different APIs. In the past, this often meant a lot of back and forth, a lot of siloed work, a lot of potential for miscommunication, things getting lost in the shuffle. API platforms change that. They provide shared workspaces, version control systems, communication tools, all in one place. Everyone's on the same page.
So it's kind of like having a virtual war room where
Yeah.
everyone can see like the big picture, track progress, and stay in sync with each other.
That's a great way to put it. And this collaboration, it isn't just limited to internal teams, by the way. API platforms often include features for engaging with external developers and partners as well.
Oh, interesting.
Think documentation portals, community forums, even tools for, gathering feedback and managing API subscriptions.
That's really cool. It's like creating an ecosystem around your APIs, right?
Yeah,
Fostering a sense of community and shared purpose.
exactly. You got it.
But with all this, openness and collaboration, how do you ensure things don't, I don't know, spiral into chaos? How do you keep it all under control?
That's where API governance comes in. Governance. Think of it as the guardrails, right? The guardrails that keep everyone moving in the right direction. It's about establishing standards and policies for how APIs are designed, developed, and used. This ensures consistency, ensures security, and ensures alignment with, your overall business goals.
So it's like having a city planner, right? A city planner who makes sure all the buildings are up to code and the streets are laid out in a logical way.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it.
It prevents things from becoming a sprawling, unmanageable mess.
Exactly, prevents that urban sprawl. A well-defined API governance strategy, it helps organizations maximize the value of their APIs while minimizing risks. It's about finding that sweet spot, that
Yeah.
sweet spot between fostering innovation and maintaining control.
Okay, I'm with you. So we've got flexibility, we've got collaboration, and we've got governance.
hmm
But what about security? These APIs, they're often handling sensitive data. How do API platforms address those concerns?
Security is absolutely paramount. Can't forget about security. And thankfully, it's baked into the DNA of most modern API platforms.
Okay, good.
They provide tools for managing access control, enforcing authentication protocols, and, protecting against common vulnerabilities. It's about building security into every stage of the API lifecycle, security from the start.
So it's not just about bolting on security measures as an afterthought. It's about making security an integral part of the entire process, from design to deployment.
Exactly. And this is where having a centralized platform really shines, having it all in one place. Instead of having security scatter across different tools and systems, it's all managed in one place, making it much easier to enforce those policies, monitor for threats. It's a much more proactive approach to security, which is what you want.
Right, makes sense. Now, Postman's page mentions the concept of an API catalog.
Oh,
What
yeah.
exactly is that? How does it fit into, this bigger API platform picture?
An API catalog is essentially a central repository for all your APIs. Think of it like a library, but instead of books, it's filled with APIs.
I like it.
This helps teams, discover existing APIs, reuse components, avoid duplicating work. Nobody wants to reinvent the wheel. It also makes it easier to onboard new developers, get them up to speed quickly. Here's the catalog. Here's everything you
So
need.
it's kind of like an internal marketplace for APIs almost,
Yeah,
promoting reuse and collaboration within the organization.
exactly. You got it.
And I imagine it plays a role in governance as well, right?
Mm.
Ensuring that all APIs are properly documented, they adhere to standards, all that good stuff.
Absolutely. An API catalog is a key tool for both promoting collaboration, A&D, enforcing governance. And, some companies, they even take it a step further and create public API catalogs, showcasing their APIs to the world.
Wow.
They're fostering a wider ecosystem of developers and partners. It's about opening up and sharing.
Wow, it's amazing to see how API platforms, they're not just about technology, they're also about building communities and driving innovation through collaboration. It's a whole new way of thinking about software development.
It really is. And it all ties back to that fundamental shift, in how we build software today. In the age of microservices and cloud native applications, API platforms, they've become the essential infrastructure for connecting, managing, and securing the digital world.
They're the foundation of it all. All right, so I think we've covered a lot of ground here. We've explored the what, the why, the how of API platforms, from their core benefits to their role in shaping the future of software. But I'd be remiss if we didn't bring it back to Postman, our source for this deep dive. They're obviously like a major player in this space. Can you tell us a little bit more about their platform specifically and how it exemplifies what we've been talking about here today?
Sure. Postman, they're a great example of a platform that's really evolved to meet the needs of this API first world. They started as a tool for testing APIs, way back when. But they've grown into a comprehensive platform that covers that entire API lifecycle. And their features, they align perfectly with the benefits we've discussed today. Flexibility in terms of integrations and customization, robust collaboration tools, for teams of all sizes, and a really strong emphasis on security and governance. They even have a dedicated API network where developers can connect, share knowledge, discover new APIs. It's a really impressive platform.
It sounds like they've really embraced that ecosystem approach we talked
Mm.
about earlier.
Yeah.
They're not just building a platform, they're building a community around it.
Yeah.
And I think that's really powerful.
Exactly, and that's a key differentiator in today's crowded API landscape. It's not enough to just have great technology. You need to foster a thriving ecosystem around it, and
Yeah.
Postman's doing a great job of that.
This has been incredibly insightful. I feel like I've gone from API newbie to having a pretty solid grasp on why these platforms are so crucial to modern software
Yeah,
development.
it's been a great conversation.
But before we wrap up, I have one final question for you, and it's a big one. We've talked about all the the good stuff, the benefits of API platforms, but I'm curious: are there any downsides? Are there any like hidden pitfalls or challenges that organizations should like watch out for when they're adopting this approach?
That's a really good question, and honestly, it's one that often gets overlooked in all the excitement of embracing this new technology, this new way of doing things. There are definitely some potential challenges to think about, to consider.
Like what? Spill the tea.
hmm
What are some of the things that can go wrong? What should people watch out for?
Well, one common pitfall is complexity. API platforms, they can be pretty sophisticated, and it takes time and expertise to set them up, to configure them correctly.
Yeah.
Without proper planning and training, organizations can end up with a platform that's overly complex, difficult to manage. It becomes a burden instead of a help.
So it's not just about, buying the software and flipping a switch. It's about having a clear understanding of, your needs, your workflows, your team's capabilities. It's a bigger picture thing.
Exactly. It's about finding the right platform that aligns with your specific goals, and ensuring that your team has the skills and the resources to effectively utilize it. Otherwise, you risk creating a bottleneck instead of streamlining your processes.
Right, you're making it harder on yourself. Okay, that makes sense. What other potential challenges should organizations kind of be aware of? What else is out there?
Another consideration is vendor lock-in. Some API platforms are designed to work primarily with their own, ecosystem of tools and services.
Okay.
This can limit your flexibility down the line if you decide to switch to a different vendor or adopt new technologies. You're kind of stuck.
So it's like choosing a phone operating system, right?
Yeah.
Once you're all in on one, it can be a real pain to switch to another. You're kind of stuck with their apps and their way of doing things.
That's a perfect analogy. It's important to, carefully evaluate a platform's openness and its ability to integrate with other tools and systems before you commit. You want to make sure it's going to play well with others.
Right. You don't want to be stuck in a walled garden. All right. So complexity and vendor lock-in are two potential pitfalls. Anything else? Anything else we should be wary of?
Yeah, one other thing to keep in mind is the cost. API platforms can be a significant investment, especially for, larger organizations. And it's important to factor in not just the upfront costs of the software itself, but also the ongoing costs of, maintenance, support, training. It all adds up.
It's like buying a fancy car,
Yeah.
right? You got to think about the cost of insurance, gas, and repairs,
Yeah.
not just the sticker price. There's a lot more to it.
Exactly, precisely. It's crucial to do a thorough cost benefit analysis and make sure that the value you're getting from the platform, it justifies that investment. You want to make sure it's worth it.
Right. You gotta see that return on investment. Well, those are some really valuable insights, honestly. It's
Yeah.
easy to get caught up in the hype, but it's important to be aware of, the potential downsides as well. I think our listeners will appreciate that balanced perspective. So thank you for that.
I hope so. It's all about making, informed decisions and choosing the right approach for your specific needs. There's no one size fits all solution here.
Absolutely. Now, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about the API lifecycle.
Okay.
It's a term that gets thrown around a lot, but I think it's worth breaking it down. What are the key stages involved, and,
Yeah.
and why is having a well-defined lifecycle so important for API success?
So the API lifecycle is essentially the journey an API takes from its initial conception, the very beginning, to its retirement.
Okay.
And it typically involves stages like, design, development, testing, deployment, monitoring, deprecation, the whole shebang. And
Yeah.
having a well-defined life cycle, it ensures that APIs are developed and managed in a consistent, predictable manner. This promotes quality, promotes security, promotes maintainability. It just makes everything run smoother.
So it's like having a roadmap for your APIs,
Yes.
right? Guiding them through each stage of their existence from cradle to grave.
Exactly.
And this helps prevent them from becoming, orphaned or neglected projects, right? Things that just kind of get lost in the shuffle.
Precisely. It's about having a clear process for creating, managing, and eventually retiring APIs in a way that minimizes risk and maximizes value. You want to get the most out of them.
Right. You want to squeeze every bit of value out of those APIs. Now, Postman's page, it delves into several concepts related to the API lifecycle, like API clients, documentation, testing, and monitoring. Can you shed some light on these terms for us and explain why they're so important in this whole lifecycle context?
Sure. So an API client, it's essentially a tool that allows developers to interact with an API. It's like a translator that helps them speak the API's language. Good documentation is absolutely crucial for making an API easy to understand and use. It's like an instruction manual, right? It explains how the API works, how to use it, all that good stuff. Testing is essential for ensuring that an API, functions correctly, it meets its requirements. It's like quality control for software. And monitoring helps you track an API's performance, identify potential issues, and ensure that it's meeting its service level agreements, making sure it's doing what it's supposed to be doing.
Right. Keeping an eye on things. It sounds like each of these elements, they play a really crucial role in ensuring that an API is well designed, properly implemented, and effectively utilized. They all work together.
They do. They all work together to support the overall health and longevity of an API. It's a team effort.
This has been an incredibly deep dive into the world of API platforms. I feel like we've covered a lot of ground here, from the core benefits and potential challenges to the importance of the API lifecycle and its various components. But before we sign off, I have one final question, and this one's for our listeners out there. If you could build your ideal API platform from scratch, what what features would you prioritize? What would be at the top of your list?
That's a fantastic question to ponder. It really gets at the heart of, what makes a platform truly valuable, what makes it work for you, what features would make your life easier as a developer or as someone who relies on APIs. What would make the process of building, managing, and consuming APIs more efficient, more secure, more enjoyable? Think about it.
It's a big question, but I think our listeners are probably brimming with ideas after this deep dive. But for those who want to learn even more about API platforms, I highly recommend checking out the source material we used for this episode. Postman's website has a wealth of information on the topic, and it's a great starting point for anyone who wants to delve deeper into this fascinating and rapidly evolving field.
It's been a pleasure exploring this topic with you and with our listeners. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep asking those thought-provoking questions.
And we'll see you next time for another deep dive.